listen to death metal, go on a walk. Just don't act upon the death metal, but just do you. Do you. Speaking of doing you, you know, I there's a gamer among us who been I'm not as good as James with the transitions, especially just offhand. But Joseph, you were talking about like a Street Fighter kind of game, and that they're making a movie. We're kind of getting on the movie side, what's going on there?
Streets of Rage.
Streets of Rage. That's what I no joke. I was trying not to ruin it. I went, it was streets like Backstreet. Nope.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's going on there?
In Japan, it's called Bare Knuckle, and well, once again, the Japanese name is kind of more appropriate, because although Streets of Rage does take place on the streets many times, it also takes place in like factories and like stuff that's not a street. So it's going back to my thing with how Biohazard just makes more sense than Resident Evil. But anyways, so a lot of Streets of Rage fans probably already know this, but we're just gonna get it out here anyways. On the heels of its success with Paramount's Sonic the Hedgehog films, Sega has another franchise come to the big screen with the beat-em-up game Streets of Rage getting the film treatment. Sources tell Deadline. Derek Kolstad, who created the John Wick action franchise and penned the Bob Odenkirk action near Nobody, wrote the script on spec. So I think given the last couple of episodes, especially when we're talking about Halo, I think it's safe to say that fans can feel a certain amount of anxiety and trepidation when they see their property is going to get a movie treatment or a TV treatment or even a comic book can get people up in arms. I think for Streets of Rage fans, this is probably the best news they could have hoped for, because the John Wick series, Airsoft.
Nerf.
Ah,
Man, I didn't get the say.
So
Nerf.
The John Wick series is excellent for a number of reasons. It basically makes violence into an art form. There's a lot of choreography. There's a lot of just the simple sensation of sound and music. Visually, it's a great series too. They try to find unique locations to have events take place. And so the idea that a lot of the John Wick influence is going to go into this is a pretty promising sign. So I'm not as antsy about this as I was when we heard about the Mario movie, which we've heard surprisingly little about to now, and I don't know if maybe we'll hear something about it at E3. I think oh, actually no, we're not going to do that, right?
No, E3 is canceled everywhere.
Yeah, so maybe the Nintendo Direct will still do a thing. Sorry, Charles, what was that?
I'm still waiting for something on the Borderlands movie because we haven't heard anything about that. But we did hear about how they're making another Tales from the Borderlands game, though.
Yay.
So here's a couple of things that I know you guys aren't Streets of Rage fans, so this is really for the fans. I just wanted to share some of the ideas that I would do for a Streets of Rage movie in the hopes that they will make their way into the movie. Unrealistic hopes, but I'd rather get them out of my system anyways.
Yeah.
So one of the things that a lot of people think about that game is that the two main characters, Axel, the guy, Blaze, the girl, they've been the most consistent characters in all 4 iterations. And Axel tends to be perceived as the main character because he's the dude, but in reality, Blaze is the main character because she's the one that's always keeping her eyes out on what's happening in the city, it's the same city, Wood Oak City, always takes place there, and she's the one that rallies people whenever shit hits the fan. So she's kind of the protagonist in the movie. So the way I would frame the plot is that it's a love story where Axel is in love with Blaze, but Blaze is in love with the city. And she doesn't make time for anybody else. She's always making times for the city and becomes an obsession for her. And so he's somewhat tragically, he tries to stand at her side and help her and, wants to protect her. But at the same time, he can't get over the fact that she's just not going to be there for him in that same way. And so it's a lot about a lot of the issues that guys face and girls face with miscommunication and our intentions with one another. So that's one way that I would wrap the story around. Visually, I'm pretty sure that they know what they're doing. But one thing that's really important about Streets of Rage is that it's a gritty setting, but it doesn't look gritty. It looks neon painted, neon coded. There's a lot of bright lights. There's a lot of flashiness to this. Same with the music too. The music is probably more important than anything. The music is the most important part. In in the fourth game, they made it like context based, where as you would go through the level, the music would adjust based on what was going on. And I imagine that's what they're going to do in the movie. But to make the fans happy, what I would recommend is recreate one level from part 2, which is the theme park level. The fans will know which one I'm talking about. If they just like do that one exactly the way it plays out, maybe even with the same camera angles, the fans will walk away happy.
Okay.
Here's a fun one. So usually in beat 'em ups, you're fighting the same goons pretty often. They look the same, and obviously they're not going to go through the trouble of like drawing a new goon every time you pummel one, because that's hundreds and hundreds of goons that they'd have to draw.
Just copy
So
and
the goons
paste.
end up looking the same. Now, there's actually a fun way to justify that in context. So one of the jobbers of Streets of Rage are called Galaxias, although I prefer to call them Garcias, because that's what they were called in part 3, and that was the first game I played in this series. And they all wear the same coat, same muscle definition, same haircut. So I thought it'd be pretty funny if this is actually like a purpose thing, or like this is done on purpose, where the gangs will actually force everybody to look the same. That way they can't get arrested, because either you'd have to arrest like 1,000 people all at once, or they're all just like used to blend in with one another. So like they have like their own ID cards so they can identify each other amongst
I'm
one another.
imagining like a Grease ordeal, like them over there, just like all dressed in like the leather, the white T-shirt, the blue jeans, and it's like everyone looks exactly like that.
Yeah.
Everyone looks like John Travolta, and it's like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that could be
and this
funny.
is the fun thing that you can do is like these things that we make fun of as tropes in game design can still be things that could be justified if you use your imagination. And so rather than just like ignore that as part of the game, try to figure out some way to embrace it and celebrate the fact that you pummel somebody that looks like 1,000 other people that you've pummeled. If you make it part of the story, it's more fun. There's another one where like in part 2, characters can start like basically they have magic powers. They can shoot little bits of energy, or they do like a fire punch. But whenever you do that, you take damage. So what I would do to justify that is that the characters have to understand that every time you use one of these abilities, you're cutting your life expectancy a little bit shorter. So it adds a little bit of like empathy whenever characters are forced to do one of their abilities. So that's one thing that I would add to that. And then sorry, I guess I wrote down notes for these because I'm really passionate about this series.
Yeah.
So it's just to wrap the plot around. And by the way, the script was written, so I don't know how much like the smaller things might make it in. I don't know what they were planning for the big plot, but instead of like them basing it around one of the games in the series, I would just tell it on anthology movie where they just do all of the movies in one go. And so they can see the progression of Axel and Blaze's relationship from like the first one where they get to know each other to the second one where Blaze has kind of like embraced her persona and is now kind of like a different character. Part 3 where they save the world from a nuclear warhead. Yes, that's actually what happens in part 3. To part 4 where they're starting to get a little bit older and the new people are starting to take over. So while the new people are doing more of like the heavy lifting, they're kind of more like starting to come to terms with the fact that they don't have it together as much as they used to. And then the movie would end with a new threat arising, and Blaze calls Axel to come help. He meets up with her, but then they look at the TV and the news broadcast reveals that like hundreds of new people who dress up like Axel, who dress up like Blaze, who dress up like the other characters, started forming their own gangs. And now you have like hundreds of heroes taken to the street to beat the piss out of all of these goons. And basically like the syndicate can't do anything now because they're outnumbered and outpowered. And so the two of them realize, well, actually, I guess we can actually retire some the kids. They're gonna carry on the torch for us, and then they fuck like rabbits.
I'm in. I'm interested right there. You talk about people fucking like rabbits.
Yeah,
I'm in.
Yeah, like okay, at long last, like the two of them realize they were made for each other, which is probably literal because when you're designing the characters, you kind of design it like that way. So yeah, nonetheless, like I think that they'll do a good job. I definitely think they'll get the fights right. They combine the music, combine the visuals, combine the choreography that they're known for. I think it would still be pretty good, but yeah, I still hope that what I said can be of use to somebody. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
It was a pleasure being here. I learned a lot. I learned that hopefully in the end I can see them fucking like rabbits.
Fingers crossed. If there's any takeaway, that's
You know what? That's what I'm hoping for. Like that right there will get me to watch the movie. Whenever. When is this supposed to come out? Do you know?
I don't think there's any.
There might not be an actual date yet.
Like. Nah, this is still like early phase, so I don't think we'll even hear about it until late 2023.
Okay. Hopefully this is what I'm hoping for you and the fan base is I'm hoping that they do a Doom situation. Like whenever they did the Doom movie, that was like the first time you've ever seen a movie truly use the game before it to its advantage, being like, because at the end scene, spoilers alert for whoever hasn't seen the Doom movie, is towards the end when The Rock is truly the bad one and you have the one guy trying to survive and make it out. It goes literally in first person mode, just like Doom, and it actually like the camera moves around just like the old Doom games. They did such a good job. Like it's amazing.
It's kind of frightening.
Yeah, like
to think like, wow, that's what it would look like if I were in that situation. Yeah, no, that sequence is very unsettling, and I love it for it.
I love it too, but I want more movies to do that. Like Halo, you kind of see them trying to do it in like Halo, where it's like you see the Master Chief's head, but it's not gonna be the same, and unfortunately would not be the same. But for a game like you're talking, like maybe there's like a scene or something where like they're fighting, and I don't know how they could, but implement that, or like little Easter eggs in the background where it's like a kid's watching a show on the screen, or he's playing a video game, and it's the game. Like I love Easter eggs hidden in movies, and I feel like that would be really cool to see.
Yeah, well, all they have to do is just like a frame where the characters walk in from the left, and the enemies approach them from the right. It doesn't have to. This is why I said like recreate one of the levels from part 2 like shot for shot, because you're talking about like a 2 to 3 minute sequence at most, but it would be enough to pay tribute to the game series. So that's like they don't have to do much, but a little moment. It's not like the entire Doom movie took place in first person.
Oh no,
people would be
it was
exhausted.
only the end. It was a little bit at the end.
Yeah, exactly. So it's better to do it that way, I think.
What's that, Charles?
That first person scene in that movie is the best part of the whole movie.
It was, and I think the biggest
like
reason because of the nostalgia, because it took the game into the movie. And I feel like
there's
that's
one thing that I'll say
why.
about the Doom movie is that I don't think it gets enough credit, because I think people realized like what was the overall thing they were going for. The whole premise of that movie was them trying to recreate multiplayer. It wasn't like, because you bring all of these Marines in, and they're all working together to try to solve it, and then one player of course turns into a team killer. So I think it was more trying to go for that like multiplayer vibe rather than necessarily like go one for one with the story of like the main hero. So that's where once I realized they were doing that, I thought, okay, now I get it. This is not going to be the movie that makes or breaks Doom, but it's just a fun take on the events of Doom that are not as like sacred in terms of continuity.
Yeah. No, Doom was incredible for what it was, especially at the time and everything else. But I hope to see more movies or series use the game that they're basing off of into their movies. Like obviously if everyone started doing it, it wouldn't be unique, but different like little things like that, or at least like if something's in the game that would be cool to have, but it doesn't mean much in a story, but like the fans would love, like let's say they make a Zelda movie and there was like a Game Boy on a shelf.
I hope you guys don't mind me dedicating a whole episode to it.
when that comes out, you and James take the podcast. Like I will literally just have the camera set up. It's just you two talking back and forth. But did you have any final points on your movie you hope to see?
No. That was everything. I wish them luck, and if they want my number, they can find me on LinkedIn.
Nice. Or they can find your YouTube channel down in the description below.
No, go to my LinkedIn page.
No, YouTube. Go to YouTube.
Go to my LinkedIn.
They made the movie based around Blaze. You know that the Axel fans would be pissed off.
Axel doesn't have any fans. I wouldn't worry about that. Don't worry
sure,
about it.
sure.
Like, no, like you're totally like, yeah, okay, I can see that being a thing, but no, don't worry about